Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV, and hello to our friends listening on Business Talk Radio. I am Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is the art in creating mental health wealth. And we're going to be discussing today how to balance dis-ease. Joining me here is the lovely, beautiful, talented, and my friend Jenetta Barry with the Epiphany Process. Let's welcome her. Hi, Jenetta.
Hey, Dr. Jacalyn, and hello, everybody out there. It's great to be back again and presenting another inspiring show. I love co-hosting with you.
Oh, thanks. I love co-hosting with you. And we were chatting backstage that it's incredible that you're there in Africa. I'm here in Florida. And thank goodness, I know you've been traveling a lot and haven't had access to Wi-Fi everywhere, which we really take for granted in a lot of ways. But there you are today, looking bright and shiny and beautiful, and all the technology is working.
It is. It's been my mission that wherever we go, I've got to make sure Wednesday this time we're really covered for this, because over this last week I've been in places it's been impossible to have done this show. We went to a wedding on Saturday, right in the middle of the bush, in the middle of nowhere, and there's just no way. So it's been wonderful how it's been fortuitous and worked out, and just special journeys too. It's lovely to be, because this is my home, and COVID stopped me from getting back home, and now I'm showing my partner Andy Kenya and giving him an insight. So it's been a really special journey.
It sounds very special. And I know we have a couple of pictures to share, photographs that you brought today. So before we get to that, though, I do want to spotlight you and ask you to share a little bit about your background and what the Epiphany Process is. And we're going to be talking about dis-ease. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, people still struggle and suffer and need to know they're not alone. And people like you are there to help them. So take it away, Jenetta.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. So the Epiphany Process is a process that I began to research and work on and expand on 15, 16 years ago, after the loss of my 16-year-old daughter, Jenny. And she and I had an enormous argument one day, and she took herself off and decided she was packing to leave home. And I realized that something wasn't quite right. And I went to find her, and I found her hanging with a broken neck in her shower. And it was huge. And I just knew eventually, because I went to ground zero on all levels of my life. And I knew eventually that the only way I was going to survive this was to make a decision not to live a life of hell on earth anymore, and to find ways to accurately get through this greatest life test. And it took some doing and a lot of studying, a lot of application, but I was, the value of getting through this was greater than the value of staying stuck in grief and overwhelm and extreme loss. And when I was able to marry those two up, I realized what was more valuable, and I kept focus on that and made sure that I eventually worked through it. That doesn't mean to say I've got it all behind me and that I'm okay now. I'm not going around like Pollyanna saying, yeah, everything's fine. It's a lifetime process, and there are some times where it is very, very tricky, but most of the time I've got it in now a place of open-hearted acceptance and appreciation and grace. And with that, I've been able to help many others through from day-to-day challenges right through to really extreme PTSD challenges as well, throughout the world, online for 14, 15 years now. So it's been a really interesting journey for me to walk with. And one of the things that the epiphany process enables you to understand is where there's an equal amount of gain where we're only seeing loss, and where there's an equal amount of loss where we're only seeing benefit. Because anytime we're seeing more one side than the other, it blocks and distorts our ability to think and feel and see clearly. It's like a distraction. Our thoughts and our emotions distract us from being able to see what is actually happening. And so today Dr. Jacalyn and I talked about maybe it would be a really great time. There a lot of people are going through a lot of emotional conflict right now and mental conflict. The amount of stretching that everybody's had to do to change and adapt and reinvent is probably the most probably since the Second World War, I would say, in first world countries. And so we thought today we would talk about the connection between our thoughts and our emotions and disease in feeling ill. And that's why dis-ease, it means you're not at ease with yourself. If you break down the very word itself, you're not at ease with yourself, which creates a dis-ease. And we're going to go more into that as we speak. But to just finish off on the epiphany side, two charities that are attached to the epiphany process. The one is a theatrical production we've put on and are going to franchise internationally, worldwide, all over, is contemporary dance, voice, music, and visuals as well, really addressing depression, suicide, and accurate solutions. And it's been very well received in the times that we have presented this show. Unfortunately, COVID put the stops on being able to expand it, but it's on the cards to happen, and we're working on it as we speak. And then the other is we found out that Jenny died on World Mental Health Day, which is the 10th of October. So we now have World Jenny's Day, which is a day where we use theatre and the arts and the performing arts to celebrate mental health wellness, because there's nothing broken. Everybody talks like being depressed and having suicidal ideation means you're broken. It means you're out of kilter. Here I am, I'm in Africa, here's a fly, excuse me. It means we're out of kilter, but it doesn't mean that there aren't accurate solutions to go through it that are heart-opening. I'm doing well here. That are heart-opening and effective. And the moment we change conversations and soften them and normalize them, then new happenings come out, new outcomes. And World Jenny's Day on the 10th of October is a celebration of those new conversations using theatre and the arts. So back over to you, Dr. Jacalyn, as we open up this discussion.
Thank you, Jenetta. That was a great way to frame what we're going to be talking about today. And I couldn't help but think when we think about dis-ease and emotions, if you have a chronic illness, for example, I have 3, when you start to get some of the flare, like you know that it's coming, then at least with me, I start worrying about, well, is it going to be a full-blown flare? How's this going to impact what I'm doing? I don't have time for this. And I feel the anxiety start to build, which is the exact opposite thing of what you want. What are your thoughts about that? How just thinking about how it could go versus, you don't know how it's going to go, but in your
Yes.
mind, you think the worst.
You're already planning the story and the outcome before anything else. I think in fact, there are two backstories that I'm going to share with you just now. But one of the things is that it's understanding that any way you see things makes it so. Whether you believe it is or whether you believe it isn't, either way, you're right. Because that is the power of our thoughts and our emotions. So the moment we start anticipating how it should be, there's a great endorsement going on there, and endorsing that belief system, and then the body catches up with that belief system and says, okay, that's the truth. That's the truth. Meanwhile, it's only part of the truth, because that anxiety is very real. I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I must drop the anxiety and then it'll be all right. That won't work either, because the anxiety is part of the deal. It's how you handle it and embrace it that is key. So I'm going to go back to 22 years ago, where I had my backstory it still blows me away, really. Because I was here in Kenya with young children, and things were very challenging. A husband who was battling on many levels, job-wise and otherwise. And I was running 4 jobs at the same time, 4 children, all at school, 4 jobs, and also choreographing 2 theatrical productions to put food on the table, basically, for all of us. And I can remember getting to in between the 2 productions and lying in bed one night. And I'd already been showing signs that I had fibroids in my uterus. It was showing all the signs with quite heavy bleeding, but I knew it had to be addressed sometime. And I laid in bed, and I remember going, I can't do this anymore. I can't. It's too overwhelming. I'm expected to be everything. I've got to be super mum, super wife, daughter, super sister, super friend, super entrepreneur, super teacher, because I was teaching as well as teaching theatre and ballet as well. And I laid there and went, I can't do this anymore. But I can't say I'm breaking apart and having a breakdown to anybody, because then I'll be a failure, and very, very the opposite to super. And I knew, for me, I wasn't prepared to actually admit that I was falling apart. So I had read quite a lot up on what we're talking today. And I remember lying there saying to myself, what will it take for me to actually have permission to fall off the edge of the world and everybody still love me and endorse me and not judge me for falling apart and being a failure? I mean, nowadays, I don't even think about it that way. But, 22 years ago, people didn't fall apart unless there was something very wrong with you. And so I laid there and I went, it would take a major, major illness. And then I would have permission to step back. Everybody would lovingly come in and take over my children and help with the house, and then be there and support me and endorse me and say, it's all right, it's okay. You can fall off the edge of the world. And I thought, that's it. That's what would do it. And I thought no more about it. But these symptoms within me got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I was hemorrhaging really, really badly. And finally, a doctor said to me, in those days, they didn't have good blood supplies here. And they were saying, we're going to have to fly you out of Kenya and we'll send you down to South Africa, which is like a 5-hour in fact, where they'd have sent me to was more a 6-7 hour journey to be treated for this really severe problem you have. And if you need a blood transfusion, they can give you one because you're losing so much blood, and they tried to stop it and all sorts of things. And I got down to South Africa and was kind of escorted off the plane and into surgery. Actually, on the 4th of July, I was operated on in 1999. And they opened me up and they went, there's cancer here. There's cancer in the lining of the uterus. And they worked out that it was stage 1. So it hadn't progressed too far, but it was grade 4. Now, grade 4 is how quickly that cancer is moving. And they worked out that being grade 4, it had taken 2-3 weeks from the time it had started to get to where it was. And it had been 2-3 weeks previously that I had said I need to get really seriously ill to have permission to step off the edge of the world and still be loved and supported. And I remember lying there going, oh my word, I did that? So if I can bring a disease on, I can reverse it. And I started, it was a whole thing. I didn't go home too quickly, by the way. My kids were looked after by some very dear friends who are still so much a part of my life now. But I only got home 4 or 5 months later after much treatment and so on. And in that time, I started studying what dis-ease was really about. And what I started to see was that anytime you have a thought stroke emotion that is overwhelming, it kind of is somewhere inside you. And if you judge it, you tend to bury it, and you go, okay, no, I'm not feeling emotional. I'm feeling really okay. Or I'm not overthinking. I have to be emotional, and you're really over the top emotional. Whatever it is, there's a part of you that buries that emotion somewhere in your body. And then I noticed that there was a correlation between where you bury it in your body and where your body starts becoming your messenger. And it starts telling you. And then I came across a book by Dr. Louise Hay that actually, the content was actually written by Dr. John Demartini, who I've worked and studied with as well, but I hadn't then. And I started reading those books, and it confirmed what I had started understanding, was that so many different parts of our body tells us a message, becomes our messenger as to where we've stored that excess emotion, energy, charge, whatever you want to call it, and it's stuck there. And that's where the root of so much cancer is, because cancer is the manifestation of too many cells trying to deal with that disease there, and it creates too many cells. So when you put whatever it is into your different parts of your body, and it starts building up in too much energy there, too much charge, too much angst, too much stress, your body starts telling you, listen, there's too much stress here. So instead of looking at disease, instead of my looking at disease as an enemy to be fought and overcome and avoided, I began to see where disease was my messenger, and was giving me an indication of which parts of my body I was burying unresolved issues in. And the moment I started doing that, I never looked back. And whatever I've dealt with in the 20 years since then has been parts of myself that really needed to deal with huge issues. But all the little issues, by way of example, I did have a cold a few weeks ago, but it was the first one in 20 years. And I could see why that cold had manifested. And I've had a couple of big hiccups in that time since I had cancer, but I am mostly a healthy person. Right now, I'm dealing with a really interesting sore left knee, which I'd love to chat about a little bit later because it's really challenging me at the moment. So that basically, in a nutshell, is where I started understanding how valuable disease is, depending on how you handle it. If you see it as your world's worst enemy, then it manifests even more as that. And when you start seeing it as a guide and how to handle it in balance, then just heart-opening things start happening.
Wow, Jenetta, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. I had no idea. It just goes to show that you just don't know what people are dealing with. So that's a lot. And you've come a long way, and I just am grateful that you're here. A question I have for you, you just mentioned that we can look at it as a messenger, right? So if you're aware of where the disease is showing up, how do you correlate that to what it is that you haven't dealt with or that's buried? So in other words, let's say you just mentioned your knee. So what does that mean in terms of what has brought that on?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. It was a ballet injury I suffered about 7-8 weeks ago. I was doing pirouettes because I'm a big dancer, and I was doing it with my very special friend Claire, who was holding the class online, and I was doing these pirouettes and I was fine. And then a few hours later, this knee started to really, really click in. And I've been battling with it ever since. And part of me goes, let's initially try and deal with it without using medication. And this is where I sit going, yes, but, because medication is necessary. I always believe that there's a time and space for medication. It is so helpful in breaking the pain barrier, or pushing whatever infection might be into another way of being handled. And so it is about using a medication as well. But I wanted to try initially to see if I could do without. Then I could see, no. So I was using all sorts of creams and anti-inflammatories and taking them and so on, and knee guards, and it's still stuck there. And then I went, Jenetta, you haven't done the epiphany stuff on it. So what is the emotional charge connected to this knee? And I realized that what happens is, obviously, we've got male and female in us. And if you're right-handed, generally your left side will be your female energy and your right side will be your male energy, and vice versa. So this is my left knee. I'm right-handed. So it meant that it's my feminine, and the knee is very much about flexibility and ego, and being able to release and step forward and know and have the faith and all that. And it's the beginning of the year, and I'm stepping into the next phase of World Jenny's Day and insight. And, like so many of us as entrepreneurs, there's a big responsibility on one's shoulders. And the ego side of me is going, what if I succeed and it makes me not a nice person? And I stopped. I worked all the epiphany side and went, that's it. That's exactly it. It's me and they call it imposter syndrome and all sorts of things these days. But the bottom line is that so many people step forward wanting to make a difference, and that little ego voice says, who are you, and what if, and what's that going to make you, and are you going to be loved and lovable, and all that sort of story carries on internally. And over the last couple of days, I've been working through all the epiphany. There's a whole load of questions that I started asking myself. And I went into big painkillers at the same time. And I'm now walking normally again, but it took a bit of resistance from me going, no, I'll just. So even now with me, all these years later, and knowing what needs to be done, it is experimental. There's no, you've got to do it this way, or it's the highway or no way. There's the way where you integrate outside of yourself with medicine and internally with your thoughts and emotions, so that the three marry up and create a synergy and a balance. And when I've done it, it's worked. Got to do it though.
You have to do the work. Yeah, I think that's fascinating, because I know for myself and many other people, we try to find holistic ways to alleviate the pain or the whatever the root cause is. And in this case, I'm struggling with an eczema flare, which is interestingly enough worse on my right side, and I'm right-handed, so we'll have to talk about that. But if people are like, try this, try that, and I tried all the things that they said because I didn't want to have to go to the medication, and none of them worked. In fact, it made it worse. And then the whole time you're thinking to yourself, well, I bought all these things, right? I spent all this money on all these things, which now made it worse. And I'm going to have to go back to the medication anyway. And then you use the medication, and all of a sudden you get some relief. So
yeah,
it's because people say, oh no, you don't need medication.
Advocate.
Yeah, it's
this fly. Excuse me.
So, Jenetta, what are your thoughts that if I have a bad eczema flare, and it's, by the way, it's only from the waist up and it's mostly on the right side. What does that mean?
Okay, so are you right-handed or left-handed?
Yes, right-handed.
Okay, so if you were the other way, for anybody listening going, yeah, but I'm left-handed, you just reverse it. So if you're left-handed, for our viewers and listeners, those of you who are left-handed, if I'm talking the other way, you reverse it. So for you, Dr. Jacalyn, being right-handed, having it on your right side means that there's male energy that you're working with, that you're really grappling with right now. The male side of you, the male domination as you step forward in your male energy to create this amazing USA global TV environment. And what's happened is that your body's saying, okay, so let's see where your judgment is sitting, your self-judgment, your internal judgment, and that. And looking up eczema, it basically says here it's about breathtaking antagonism and mental eruptions. Also, the bits and pieces I've researched, something about what you're dealing with is getting under your skin. Emotionally and mentally, and really bothering you. So when you can stop and look at that and go, that's what it is, and then start looking at what those triggers and where those triggers have come from, already there starts to be a balance and an understanding and less judgmental. We get very judgmental about our diseases. I shouldn't be like that, and should be strong. And when you soften into what it is you're experiencing, it softens the results of what the disease is telling us. And it becomes more manageable. So it's not about getting rid of the disease. It's about learning how to manage it using a combination of of medicine, and then being able to address and even embrace where you're overthinking, overanalyzing, or burying emotions. Because usually our male side, our analytical side, overthinks, and buries the feelings. So there'll be something that's getting in under your skin that you haven't been able to look at because you've got that judgment, that list of judgments. When you see that, it's just, wow, amazing.
You hit the nail on the head. Thank you for this live coaching session.
You're so welcome. I mentioned that I've hardly ever been ill, but 3 years ago, I nearly died again. And it actually amazed me, because what had happened is I'd taken Insight over from Kenya to Europe, the theatrical production I mentioned earlier. And I had intended to set up my UK base and go backwards and forwards to Kenya. And then I met Andy, my new partner in my life, and a series of happenings closed everything down that I had planned to do. And I went into the illusion that I had lost choice again. 3 years ago, I went back there and went, all my choices, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. And I remember sitting a couple of nights before going, I'm feeling so overwhelmed again and choiceless. And 2 days later, my appendix, which is on my right side, of course, burst and was gangrenous. And the hospital left it in me for 24 hours. And by the time they took it out on me, I was in hospital for 6 weeks. Andy sat holding my hand for those 6 weeks and draining drains. And as each of my organs went into an absolute hissy fit. And when I could speak again, my son Neil, who has done the epiphany process, is very much part of World Jenny's Day and believes so much in all of this, he called me and said, okay, Mum, so what's the emotional, mental charge you're running with this? And I said, I've been under the illusion that I'm trapped and can't move forward. And it's such an interesting thing that I'm back here again, all these years later in a different form. So I always call it like the onion peels, and peels. And I'd managed to do the little onion peels, but this one was a biggie for me. Not everybody goes to those biggie ones, but obviously part of me decided that I would address this one. And I actually laid in limbo for a long time going, am I staying here or am I leaving this planet? What's happening here? As I work my process going, well, where am I more attached to the extreme? And I wasn't sure. And eventually I had to make the decision, I'm staying, and start working and saying, okay, here we go. And eventually I moved out of it and stopped all the horrendous side effects, and then was able to help so many people through similar, where they've got through similar too. And in fact, I've now written it into the Epiphany Process certification program, because it's so powerful when you can start observing and managing, rather than being in a place of extreme angst, extreme fear, extreme judgment, and feeling like you've lost control, like the disease is controlling you. And that's where I sit. Perhaps I had this recent one to humble me, because it's me humbling me, because I was going around saying it's entirely possible to balance out anything and everything. And this was more than difficult to balance out in hospital with all the side effects. It was a huge challenge. So perhaps it came in with me going, it's time to just be a little bit more humble, and understanding that everybody has a different journey and a different lesson they're wanting to learn out of that. I think that's possibly also another reason why I went through that 3 years ago. And so that's the most recent one.
Oh my goodness, Jenetta, I'm just overwhelmed with everything you just shared. You've been through so much, and yet here you are looking beautiful, speaking articulately, and continuing on. A question that comes to mind is, based on everything that you've learned and just that part about the ego and humbling yourself, how has that impacted your work with World Jenny's Day? What are you doing differently today than you were 3 years ago in reference to that?
Yeah, I love that question, and it's very valid. 3 years ago, I was possibly more gung-ho about getting the message out there, because it was my story and my message. I think now, in terms of that, I'm more able to be multidimensional with what's going on and with people. Softer. I think it's softened me. And really, before I would possibly, not always, but possibly, I was in that place of, this is such an accurate process that anybody who doesn't try it, they don't know what they're missing out on. Post this, it was more a case of when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And although I used to say that before, I didn't always act it out. So I know the reason why this process is so successful is that the people who are ready for it show up, and the people who aren't don't. And so it means that the ones I'm working with are on that plane of consciousness. They're ready for this. And each of us has our different paths to the same destination. No one way is more superior than the other. I just know this one is the most accurate I've ever come across. But not everybody's ready for it, or I'm ready for them, or the process is ready for either of us. And that's made it a softer, gentler journey.
Beautiful. Is it possible, once someone works with you and goes through the epiphany process, they can then work the process themselves? Or is it good to come back and touch base with you and revisit from time to time?
Many people get the basics of the process and are able to go off and administer it for day-to-day stuff. People who've been through bigger challenges, whether it's PTSD or deep depression or extreme illness, they will get the tools and go off, but often they'll say, we need a top up for a while. And then some of them will even say, we want to get really masterful at it. And that's when there are 2 certification programs. So that's where the one certification program is the self-mastery one, and gives you a certificate at the end, a certificate of completion. And the other one is where I invite people who I know really have what it takes to be consultants. So they have to do the self-mastery first to become a consultant, and then move on to the next certification phase. So many ways it pans out. The ones who want to come back either have top-up sessions, or they go, no, I really want to be able to have anything thrown at me sideways, and I've got this skill. And when I watch the people who have done that, one of them is Savannah Stevenson. And her video testimonial is out there. Her success story is out there worldwide, and she talks about it openly. And I was at her wedding on Saturday in the middle of the bush, in the middle of nowhere. And when that happens, and I see somebody take where they were so severely challenged and have moved on and have progressed and have stepped into their genius and their wisdom, as that very special lady has, it just takes my breath away. So everybody, again, within the epiphany, there's no one way you have to go that way, otherwise you're not on the right path. Everybody has a different needs. I've got somebody else in Australia who comes back regularly, but not at regular times. And then somebody else who's going, okay, I want to do 2 weeks for a little while, every 2 weeks, and then they come back saying, no, I need every week. And then others who do full sessions with me and they're gone. Each person, when they're stepping more and more into their truth and their light, they start trusting what it is and how it is that they can step forward with this process.
Thanks so much, Jenetta. We do have 2 photographs that I want to share before the end of the show, and maybe you can just tee up what we'll be looking at.
Yeah, I just thought, I was sitting here this morning. We've had quite a journey, actually. We've been through the Great Rift Valley over the last week since Andy arrived from Oxford, where we live. We've been through past several lakes and visiting some meaningful friends. And then today we're actually up by Mount Kenya. Now, for those of you who don't know East Africa, there are 2 snow-clad mountains almost on the equator. In fact, Mount Kenya is on the equator and it's got snow on it. And the other one is Mount Kilimanjaro. So if you're ever flying from Nairobi to Mombasa, and it's a clear day like today has been, and you're in a small aircraft and you look out the right, you'll see Mount Kilimanjaro with this snow, and you look on the left and there's Mount Kenya. That's how close they are as a plane flies. But Mount Kenya here is in Kenya, and Kilimanjaro is actually in Tanzania. It used to be part of Kenya, actually, and then it was gifted as a birthday gift by Queen Victoria, and Tanzania was called Tanganyika in those days, and she gifted it to Tanganyika because it was a German protectorate, and she gifted it to her nephew, Kaiser Wilhelm, and it became part of Tanzania. And that's why Kenya does a funny thing around Mount Kilimanjaro as they move the border post. Not many people know that story. So at one stage, both mountains were in this country when Kenya was a British protectorate. And so when we arrived in here to stay here for a couple of nights, we moved over from the southern hemisphere to the northern as we watched the mountain there. The equator was right there. So this is the picture of Mount Kenya. That's the first one. That's the road we took to come in. And you can see, unfortunately, global warming, there used to be a lot more snow on Mount Kenya and Mount Kilimanjaro, but there's still a fair amount. So that's the road we came in on. And then the next one is us having breakfast this morning in this beautiful house we're staying in here in Nanyuki, Tamau. And just above the trees there, from our breakfast table, you can see the peaks of Mount Kenya and the snow there as well. So we sat on the equator looking at that this morning. And tomorrow we're going into what we call the Northern Frontier District, to Samburu. And we're spending a night in Samburu Game Reserve. And that is a semi-arid district. It's got camels and doom palms and It's a lot of scrub land, very little for animals to survive on, and yet there's a whole game park with every wild animal you could think of, and the Samburu tribe, who are related to the Maasai. They look just like the Maasai. People mistake Samburu and Turkanas for Maasais. And the Samburu tribe have lived there for generations. And there's this beautiful, the Washu Nero River comes through Samburu like an oasis. So we're going to be in a tented camp called Elephant Bedroom Camp, because the elephants come right up to your tent and look in, and we're going to be there tomorrow night in the middle of nowhere. So it's going to be amazing.
Oh my gosh,
if
what a
anybody
trip.
wants to know, come and talk to us. We'll bring you and take you, and be amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. It just sounds phenomenal.
It really is. It's a very special journey, and anybody who'd like to experience it, I highly recommend you do, because there is so much to offer in one tiny country, and it's very close to my heart. It's why the theatrical production Insight started and was birthed here. A couple of weeks ago, you and I, Dr. Jacalyn, talked about my father being in the record industry here and putting Kenya on the international map. This is a very special part of the world, and it has a lot to offer worldwide. And the more it's honored, the more I know that a universal difference will be made. There's something about this country that has that ability and capacity. So
I look forward to coming over there one day. It sounds phenomenal. And I
Can't
learned
wait.
so much from you today. I love it. As we close out this show, why don't we play one of the video clips we have? We've got 3 here. Why Jenny's Day, Crossing Over, and which one would you like to play?
Well, we didn't show, the other one, Crossing Over, the other day. And Crossing Over perhaps works in with all that we were talking about today. It was the moment when, after losing Jen, I realized I'd forgotten I had choice. Rather like 3 years ago, I'd forgotten I had choice then and was feeling trapped 3 years ago. Well, after losing Jenny, I'd forgotten that I had choice. And I thought living an emotional prison sentence for the rest of my life would be how my life went and would be. And that's how it was, until I realized I could shift it. And this production shows me, it actually did happen to me. I was crossing the road and I was halfway across when I realized, oh, hold on. Well, actually, as I started stepping off, I realized, but as I got to the middle, I really realized, and I got to the other end and realized I'd had a crossing over moment, an epiphany moment. And what we did in the show was showing that a lot of people can have those epiphany moments, but if you don't have the skills after an epiphany moment to deal when life does blindside you, it's very difficult to stay in that epiphany moment place. And that's what I realized Jenny, my daughter, was missing, was that she could try and be positive, but without the skills to deal with when life shouts at you again and blindsides you, it's almost impossible to stay in that place of deciding that life's going to be manageable. So this production number shows that crossing over, and then that decision. I've made that decision, and then suddenly it shows that life's carrying on, and that person's going, holy moly, I just don't know how to move on. And then it feels like the whole world's screaming and shouting at the person on the stage. So here is Crossing Over.
Cars purposefully drive past. People facelessly walk by. My feet mindlessly move across the pavement. My body present, but inside me is not. All around, life is living, but I'm dying. Every cell in my body consumed with no longer wanting to exist. No point in carrying on. The emotional pain, larger than life allows. My very existence screaming for the pain to go. Somewhere, my unconscious mind is telling me that it's time to cross the road. I reach the pavement edge, and then, as my automated self steps to move into the streams of traffic, my conscious mind kicks in. I suddenly know that I don't want to leave this existence. My auto move makes my feet step off the curb edge. I also know that by continuing to exist as I'm feeling, I'm living an emotional, despair-filled life sentence. My body weaves between the rushing cars as I move into the middle of the road. Then certainty hits me. I really only have ever had two choices. To live a long and overwhelming life filled with angst. I continue to navigate between the other lane of traffic moving in the other direction. Or choose to find a way to live a life with purpose. I reach the other side of the street, and as my feet step back onto pavemented ground, I know that I no longer want to live a life of hell on earth. I know the time has come to choose to find ways to live a spontaneous and inspired life. To find meaning and purpose because of my pain, and to be able to search and find the answers as to how to feel at ease with life. I realize that in only minutes I have taken an epic journey, my most vital ever, and that I'm still here, and that I've safely crossed over.
Wow, that was so powerful to hear your voice and then to watch it all being played out.
That was the end of Act One. So, it had brought everybody up to go, oh, there is a solution. Yes, of course, you can make a decision. You've got choice. And everybody's going, yes. And then suddenly it left them going, but look where so many people are left. They're trying to deal with that choice, but they don't know how when everything just climbs in again. And so by the time we got to the second act, we were able to start seeing where the solutions to that were and acting and dancing that out as well.
I can only imagine that nobody wanted to leave their seat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
Wow, you have just been so authentic and transparent here today. How do you feel?
I just always feel so inspired when I can be my true self. I'm a human being, And I really believe that when all of us can step into that place and realize that whatever it is we're dealing with is messy and imperfectly perfect and perfectly imperfect, and being able to imperfectly perfect and be perfectly imperfect with all of you here today helps me to process that even that much more further. And I know from when I've worked with so many people, each time we step into the truth and the light, and that means taking that which doesn't work and seeing where it is working, and that which is working and seeing where it isn't working. That's what you and I were able to do today. And I think that is a very powerful place. And I feel inspired that we could actually share that space today together and hopefully inspire other people to see a little bit more of themselves as being loving and lovable, no matter what it is that's going on in or outside of ourselves, but especially inside of ourselves. Loving that negative part of ourselves as being lovable and loving.
Brilliant. And I think also another takeaway is to look at the various relationships or situations that are in your life that might not be working for you, that you don't want to let go of because you don't want to make that change, or even look at yourself in the mirror and say, come on, this isn't working for you. And that's why these things are showing up.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And then on top of that, before you actually say, okay, this is not working for me, understand where it is. Because the moment there's an extreme more than not, then there's it's extreme. But when you can start saying, okay, this is where it's not working, I can see that as clear as the light of day. It's not working. It needs some decisions made to it and some actions taken. I get it. But before you do that, to be able to bring in and say, what is working in that situation that I'm blocked, blinded, and distorted from seeing? When you start seeing that there's a whole load of things happening in that situation and it not working, that if everything had gone smoothly, you'd be missing out on skills, on techniques, on experiences that are so powerful that whatever isn't working needed to happen. And then when you see that, you can then take the two choices and you get a feeling of which one has a little bit more clout. Instead of you going, oh, I have to take that extreme action, and this is no longer serving me, and I took the wrong actions and reactions before now. Now I know there's a lot of judgment in that charge. But when you can start saying, this is where it served me, and I'm very grateful it's happened, and I see what it's giving me, and I can see what won't work if I go that way, where I'm saying I must now go, as much as it will. And you're going there going, okay, now it's time to take that action. But it's done from a gentleness. It's very powerful.
Yes, I can definitely see that. It's very, very good advice and direction. And Jenetta, we are going to close out the show. I'm going to spotlight you. Who should reach out to you, and how would you like people to contact you?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. I feel so passionate. Anybody who is feeling compromised in their lives, and who isn't? So if you're feeling like it's time to find new ways to get over feeling compromised rather than being stuck there, if you're ready to step into your power rather than waiting for somebody else or something else to do it for you or rescue you, if you really want to step into your true genius and learn how to do it with yourself and for yourself, so that powerful conversations come out your mouth, powerful, powerful words without having to think about it. You don't have to go and say, now I'm going to say this and do that. If you'd like to know how to spontaneously speak your truth from the heart powerfully and step into your power so you can deal with all challenges in the most powerful way, then I'd love to chat with you. Reach out and let's have a conversation.
Thank you so much, Jenetta. It's a pleasure seeing you. And as always, thank you for taking the time and making sure that you are available for the show, given that you're traveling and all the technology issues. We do have one comment from our team member, Diane Floyd-Beam. Hi, Diane. Chills came over me with crossing over. The positive, inspirational ripple effects are life-changing for many. Jenetta, thank you for taking your pain and helping others.
Diane, thank you for that feedback from you. That means a lot, and just so precious to have you listening live to this show. I can't wait once I'm back in Oxford to be able to interact. And Diane, I'd love you to be on this show with us as well and invite you. Let's make a plan, and thank you so much for that feedback. It means the world.
Thank you, Diane. It's so weird. I felt Diane was watching today. I don't know why, but thank you, Diane. Really appreciate it. All right, Jenetta, I'll let you go back to your day. What time is it there?
It is 6 o'clock in the evening.
So evening.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. I'll be in touch. Thank you again. Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow, that was really powerful. And please do reach out to Jenetta. She is so wonderful. She just helped me immensely today, just live on the air. I want to share with you that we are coming back at the top of the hour at 11 a.m. Eastern time with the United Kingdom news and culture. And Diane Floyd-Beam will be joining me, as well as Ian Pelham-Turner, Helena Shard, and Simon McDonald. Until then, please do go over to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV. And also our website is usaglobaltv.com. And you can book your session to be a guest on any of our shows. Diane, I hope you're going over there to book your session to join us here. And we would love to have the rest of you on any of our programs. If you have a story to tell, if you have a journey that you want to share, we welcome you. Again, usaglobaltv.com to book your session. All right, thanks so much. We'll be back shortly with our next program. Until then, stay safe and please do take care of yourselves and live in gratitude and with grace. Bye.